Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Browns getting ready to head to New Orleans to face the Saints, so we'll have plenty on that in just a minute. This is something that keeps cropping up. This from the 33rd team. 6 NFL coaches that are on the hot seat after a brutal 2024 season. They say Kevin Stefanski is one of them. Kevin Stefanski, firing him would be a massive mistake for the Browns, 2-time Coach of the Year. Winning record through 5 seasons and 10 different starting quarterbacks. Browns finally have someone who is a quality problem solver and can be a settling presence for a decade or two. They also list Doug Peterson, Matt Eberflus, Brian Daboll, Mike McCarthy, and Zach Taylor from the Bengals on that list. Not a list you want to be on, G. Bush, if you are a head coach. So welcome in Garrett Bush, 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. G. Bush, this is kind of a divide. I don't think I would fire Kevin Stefanski, assuming the wheels don't completely come off in the final 8 games. But you expected to contend for an AFC championship, and you're contending for the first pick in the draft. It hasn't been good. I think the quarterback play is the main reason why, but everybody shares blame in that, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that we have to take in consideration as well. So Kevin Stefanski's been here 5 years. He has not had back-to-back winning seasons. He's won one playoff game. Some people that are detractors of Kevin Stefanski would say, well, he didn't win that game. It was a COVID game and he was at home with the rest of us. But there's conflicting information. On one hand, you can look at those numbers and say it seems that every time we have some expectations, the Cleveland Browns take a step backwards. 2021 is an example of that. Last year he came out and had a year where all those quarterbacks played for him and they went to the playoffs. But when you look at this, it's a mixed bag because, you are the 2-time Coach of the Year, but you did let your offensive coordinator go, your running backs coach go, your tight ends coach go. You did work calling the plays earlier this year. You relinquished those play calling duties to Ken Dorsey. Offense does not look good. Deshaun Watson did not look good in this offense. And, if you listen to Andrew Berry, everybody was on board with the decision to move on from Baker Mayfield, which some could say that's a mistake. And also, secondly, everybody was on board with taking Deshaun Watson. So there is some good stuff Kevin Stefanski has done. I do think he is a calming, force in the building. I do think he has some strong suits, and I think one of those is, it's not one of those things where you're wondering if he's in over his head, so to speak, and it's not a bunch of controversy like Hugh Jackson or if it's him in the front office at odds with each other. But, when you look at it, you have to take in consideration also that, look, they're looking to possibly be in the running for the number 1 overall pick or a top 10 pick. And chances are that pick is a quarterback. So you have to evaluate, is Kevin Stefanski the right person, the right offense, the right offensive mind, and the right person to get the quarterback to be able to play at a certain type level. So there's some good things, there are some bad things, but when you're 2-7, that's just the nature of the beast. That's what the business is. 2-7 means it ain't good enough. Not enough playoff wins, not enough division titles. And that's just part of the game when you have expectations.
All right, another guy that starting to hear more and more about, and it's concerning. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was put on IR after that collision with Derrick Henry against the Ravens. Spent the night in the hospital. Now, some more concern about how serious the injury might be. Browns haven't said much about it since Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was placed on injured reserve. Minimum 4 games, probably most likely done for the season. We heard Jordan Hicks talk about it a little bit yesterday, that they're hoping for a recovery, which just never sounds good. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I wasn't as concerned about it until I started hearing Jordan Hicks talk about a miraculous recovery yesterday. So now I'm concerned.
Yeah, look, listen, I deal with spinal cord issues. I've had neck surgery, I've had back surgery. I'm aware of some of the things. We take a look at what happened to Greedy Williams a couple of years ago. Anytime you're dealing with your cervical spine, I thought it was a very dangerous situation, and he kind of, you could kind of see him, saying certain things about not being able to feel stuff. When you watch the tape back, and just the way the whole thing ended up. When they said he has feeling in his extremities, that's great, but when you talk about a return to football, that's a completely different thing. You think about it like this with JOK. JOK was already wearing the halo thing, the helmet, which helps try to prevent some of the concussions. He's a very smart individual. He's an individual that's into holistic health. He's into his health, and his ability to be able to be a healthy human being after football. So this is one of the things where I would be very surprised if he comes back this year. To be truthful, if he's wise, I wouldn't. You get healthy, get yourself together, do some rehab, maybe come back. But anytime you're dealing with a spinal cord injury, cervical injury, anything with your nerve endings, those things are very tricky. Those things take time. And take it from me, I'm not tackling nobody, but I wake up and it's cold outside and my left arm's numb. I wake up and I sleep wrong on my neck, and then all of a sudden, I got a whole left side of my body that feels pins and needles. So these things are very serious injuries. I wish him the best. I pray for him. Hopefully, he's able to make a comeback. But I would, to me, I would rule it out myself. I would say, if I were the Cleveland Browns, no, JOK, we'll catch you next year, and you get better.
All right. So turn our attention a little bit to the Saints coming in. Derek Carr, quarterback for the Saints, seems to always play pretty well against the Browns. Talk about what he sees on tape with this Browns defense.
Oh man, they play very fast D line, penetrating defensive line. They want to get up the field. They want to get to the quarterback, stop the run, create negative plays. They want to create negative linebackers and safeties, good tacklers, corners are really good players. This is a really good defense that we're about to play, and so our work is cut out for us for sure. Playing these guys, but the line movement that they do in the run game, the way they play their linebackers, the way they play their safeties, they do a lot of different really cool things, making things look the exact same, but it's different. Coach Gruden always taught me that one. When defenses try and make things look the exact same, then at the snap it's different. And so they do a really good job of that. But they're an impressive group to watch. You watch them; they run to the football, they fly around, they hit, they're hunting the football, and they're uberly talented, across the board. They got guys that have played a lot of football and a lot of football at a high level. And so we definitely have our work cut out for us. But when you watch the film, they jump out at you. That they're a really good unit. So we got to be on our stuff. You got to be ready for anything, everything.
And G. Bush, Carr has not played on great teams, and he's 4-1 against the Browns. That's that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, he's always traditionally played well. Even going back to the old Raider days, he always seems to, be pinpoint. He always seems to, minimize the turnovers when he playing the Browns. He seems to get the ball out on time. And New Orleans overall has played well against the Browns. Like I remember a couple of years ago, we had a terrible, I think it was either Christmas Eve or one of those games where it was just a nasty, brutal game in Cleveland Browns Stadium. And you had, I think, Andy Dalton playing for them. And they came down here and ran the ball well. The Browns inexplicably threw the ball 30 or 40 times in that game. And the Saints, a warm weather dome team, came in here and beat the Browns on what was supposed to be a game where Nick Chubb got the ball 1,000 times, but it didn't happen. It's one of those things. We still kind of talk about that to this day. We still kind of have a identity thing that we're trying to deal with, but that's neither here nor there. Um, no, the thing about this game is going to be this, and it's kind of bad to say we down to what we've talked about so much. We're down to Miles Garrett again. How many years have we done this where it's just like, all right, the Browns, we come in with certain hopes. Zadarius Smith is out. We talked about Mike Hall Jr. Possibly being out this week in a couple more weeks. You just got to JOK in the first segment talking about him possibly be gone for the year. Denzel Ward, he's not going to be a guy um, that's going to be playing every single snap, and he's one play away from going out of the game with some injuries and concussions. And you look around it, Hicks is another guy. Jordan Hicks is a guy who has not been in the lineup. And you got rid of Zadarius Smith. So it's like, Alex, or Wright is on the IR. So we are down to, again, Myles Garrett and the ability for teams to triple team him, and wondering where your other plays are coming from. Where are those splash plays coming from? Where are those sacks, those pressures? Where are the interceptions? You take a look at the turnovers. One interception on the year. That was by JOK. One interception out of the Browns. They want to play a certain way, but they're not taking the football away. So as people continue to go down, the Browns are going to have to find a way to manufacture certain things. And by the way, Alvin Kamara is still productive, over 1,000 yards all-purpose in the league so far. I believe that's third in the league. So they're gonna have their hands full a little bit with a team that has an interim head coach. And you know how the interim head coach thing goes. That first game, the interim head coach comes in, every button he pushes seems to work just like the backup quarterback. We had our backup quarterback day against the Ravens. We saw what we went back to against the Chargers. So hopefully the Browns are going to have something up their sleeve, because this one is not going to be an easy game.
So this is concerning too. You look at the Saints' record; it's not great, but this is one stat that defines every team's NFL season. Bleacher Report: Browns are 1-4 against teams that are below 500, worst mark in the NFL, and they can't blame their 2-7 start on their schedule, because they've played 5 teams that are below 500. So more than half of their teams are below 500, and they're 1-4 in those games.
This is why is conflicting things. This is why you can't escape the Kevin Stefanski thing. You can't escape Andrew Berry. You can't escape Dee Podesta. When you take a look at that, the Browns have had one of the easiest schedules in the league. We're not even to the hard part yet. Take a look at the schedule as we get past this game. If the Browns don't win this game, where are these wins coming from? You got Pittsburgh twice. You got Baltimore again. You got Cincinnati on the road. You got Kansas City. You got the Dolphins. Denver, and Browns traditionally played terrible against Denver. Where are these wins coming from, especially when now some of the injuries are starting to hit you a little bit? That's the thing about this league. There's a lot of games left to be played, and the Browns have their bye week, right? We got a kind of a reprieve. The ALCS Guardians helped us. Now the Cavs is giving them a little runway. The Cavs is 13-0, right? They making some noise. But I'm gonna tell you something. When people start looking around and the winter meetings come and the Cavs lose a game, and people are like, okay, it's regular season basketball. People are gonna start tuning back into these Browns, looking at these games down the stretch. And it's one thing to say, okay, we lost to the Saints or the Chargers, but when you start seeing some of these division foes like Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and Patrick Mahomes is coming to town, you gonna have some eyeballs on these wins and losses, and they have to put something up on the board, or it could get restless really quick, because there's too many games that just kind of check out. They need to be competitive in some of these games.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's without question. All right, this is concerning. Michael Hall ruled out for the game, injured his knee during a drill, and is likely out for what is being described as a period of time. Injured reserve is under consideration, and G. Bush, that's a guy I really wanted to see more of. He missed time early because of the commissioner's exempt list and all that problems off the field, and now he's going to miss more time in his rookie season.
Man, this is a big blow, because again, we talked about Kevin Stefanski. You move on the other side of the football or other side of the office building in Berea, and you go talk about Andrew Berry. When you Andrew Berry down the stretch has to have guys that he has put on this roster perform. Guys who he has drafted, guys who he has traded for. You've already had to make some moves and say, okay, well, we've offloaded Zadarius Smith. We've offloaded Amari Cooper. You've already seen some, Zach Zenner looked a little shaky when he was in there. We don't know specifically what's going on with Jerome Ford. I mean, he was hurt a little bit. They need guys to step up and play well. And Mike Hall was a guy that looked really good against the Ravens. We were interested in seeing him because we're like, hey, now we got some guys that are younger that we can check and see, and it looks good on a front office. If you can say, look at Mike Hall, it looks like a ball player. He played a lot of football during the second half of the season. He was out a little bit with off the field stuff, but look how he's developed. We think he's going to be a starter for us. Well, listen, I mean, this is you can't take. You had Perion Winfrey, you had Siaki Ika. Those guys, one of them couldn't get on the field. The other one got on the field, off the field stuff. You take a look at Mike Hall Jr. had the off the field stuff. Now he's injured. With that, where are your hits? Where you have more misses than hits. Right now, you're hoping Cedric Tillman turns into something, but for every Cedric Tillman, we still haven't seen Jamari Thrash. We know what we got with Anthony Schwartz, and we know what we got with David Bell. So this is a big blow to the front office because, we're looking to have to retool the cupboard, so to speak. And it's a lot of pieces that we look around. And I said this on Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. If you had to look at this roster from top to bottom, what young guys can you say I'm going to project that's going to be in the top 100 within the next couple of years?
Yeah, there are not a lot of them. There's
Ain't a lot of them. Ain't a lot. And Mike Hall was a big part of what they were trying to get done.
JOK, if he's healthy, but again, is he healthy? Yeah, I'm with you. All right, on that pleasant note, G. Bush and I will step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
I just picked up all the Ohio Lottery holiday scratch-offs.
They're multiplying.
Yeah, multiplying. With the chance to multiply my prize by 200 times with Holiday Bonus Millions.
No, they're multiplying.
Oh, you're in a daze.
A holidays.
Snap out of it, because even if we don't win instantly, all the holiday games offer a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of the ticket.
Wait, did you say up to 1,000 times?
Sure did.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan and the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Charles Boykin calling from Dayton, Ohio. I love Joe Thomas. I think the world of Joe Thomas. But Joe Thomas was the one that wanted us to draft Jedrick Wills Jr. He basically told the Browns that he was going to quit following the Browns and he was going to do this and he was going to do that. And then we drafted Jedrick Wills. He was going to work with him and turn him into being an all-pro player. So that is why Andrew Berry and the Hazlitt family drafted Jedrick Wills. Thank you, and go Browns. Woo.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. G. Bush, I don't remember that even a little bit, but whatever reason they drafted Jedrick Wills, that's a huge swing and a miss. And it's time. He might play in the NFL, but I think his time here is I'm kind of done with him.
I'm glad people's coming around. I'm not right about everything. I've been wrong about a lot of stuff. Heck, hey, Deshaun Watson did not give me my 4,500 yards like we was expecting. But one thing I will not do, I could go ahead and say I was right about the Jed Wills thing. First of all, Charles, thank you so much for chatting and bringing your voicemail to the show. But I've talked to Joe Thomas multiple times. I text with him from time to time, and he didn't endorse Jed Wills. I don't remember none of that at all. He said that, look, I've talked to Jed. I think sometimes Jed gets in trouble a little bit because he doesn't finish plays, but I think he can be a solid player. And and think like, but he had no hand in saying that, like, hey, take Jedrick Wills and I'll take him on my wing and make him an all-pro. That ain't what it was. Let's call a spade here. That was Andrew Berry in the front office saying, all right, well, listen, we lost Joe Thomas. Let's get another left tackle. I've always thought that was, when you have Tristan Wirfs, who's a all-pro, that you took after that, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Mind you, think about this. And this, I went crazy the other day on the show. Not only did Tristan Wirfs come after that, do you know CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson were guys that,
oh yeah,
I mean, guys that, and you got a guy who played right tackle at Alabama.
Yeah.
You move him to left tackle. I always thought he was more of a guard type body build than a longer, leaner, a great left tackle. And I just never saw the skill set. I never saw the nastiness. I never saw the motor. I never saw the attention to detail in his pass sets. He held, he grabbed, he bent over at the waist too much. I think he quit on plays. Like, and this is not anything a knock to him being injured. What you see from Jedrick Wills was always what you saw. We looked the other way because we had 4 other great offensive linemen that kind of was like, okay, well, we got 4 great other linemen. Well, do we really need to harp on the fact that Jedrick Wills is a rookie or he's subpar? When you take a guy like that in the top 10 and you whiff on that, you are in trouble. And it just goes right back to it. As a GM, what impact players have you gotten? If you got 5 first-round draft picks, and you wasted one of them on Deshaun Watson, another one on Deshaun Watson, and another one on Deshaun Watson, and your other 2 were Greg Newsome and Jedrick Wills.
I can't really argue with that. I mean, everybody points to him, and I've said it. You know, he's had 2 first-round picks. One of them looks like he can play in the NFL a little bit, Greg Newsome, and one of them doesn't look like it. He didn't have the other 3, but he traded them. So, I'm with you.
It's crazy. It's hard. It is hard to defend. And what happens is when you start having injuries and your quarterback doesn't play well, and you start looking around, you start to see the deficiencies with your roster. Like, the Bengals aren't good this year, but you know what they got? They got the kid Brown in the backfield who looks like a playmaker. T. Higgins. They got Jamar Chase. You saw what he just did. You already know what you got in Burrow. Hendrickson. They got pieces and parts, and they aren't even that good. So think about what deficiencies you have if you don't even have those type ball players.
Well, you got Myles Garrett.
You got Myles Garrett.
And
He'll get triple team next week, but hey, at least you got he's a top 5 player overall. But you got Myles Garrett. You could always hang your hat on that.
all right, before I let you go, what do you need to see from the Browns moving forward so you feel better? So, what do you need to see to bring back Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry?
Jason Lloyd said this today on the show, and he said, look, you know, when they let go Hugh Jackson, and you remember a couple of years ago, Greg Williams and Freddie Kitchens had that year. I think down the stretch, they went 5-3, and they won some games, but they were competitive in every game. They were competitive in a lot of the games. We knew they weren't going to go to the playoffs, but the funny thing that happened was the offense was fun. The team played hard. Greg Williams just he coached like a riverboat gambler. He was aggressive, and you started to see them play a style of football, which was actually fun, dynamic, and you saw some of the younger guys start to catch a hold. That year, Baker Mayfield looked good down the stretch. You started to say, wow, this Hollywood Higgins guy ain't too bad, man. Hey, what can we, you know, it wasn't a situation where they had a bunch of all pros or whatever the case may be, but you started to see the energy level and the team play hard. If you are Kevin Stefanski, the team is between a rock and a hard place, because the worst place you can be is quarterback purgatory. And I used to think it was win-loss purgatory. Quarterback purgatory is worse, because if you got bad quarterback play and you're not really gonna bring back Jameis Winston to kind of be a stopgap, then you got to figure out what you're doing with DTR. And if you're going to figure out what you're doing with DTR, that's basically waving a white flag saying, hey, we're not trying to win right now. But if they're going to do it, they got to go all in because, talking to Bernie Kosar and some of the other people, we know how the draft goes. We could talk ourselves into saying, oh, this ain't a great quarterback class. Listen, if you're drafting in the top 5 or the top 10, the goal is to get a quarterback. In the top two of them is going to go in the top 3 or 4 picks. So you do the math on what your record got to be to do that. Now, my question is to you and everybody out there, can Kevin Stefanski and or Andrew Berry survive that type of record?
I don't know. Here's the other thing. Put in the fact that they were expected to contend for an AFC championship, and then that'll give you a little bit more of what the decision-making process is going to be like in Berea moving forward. G. Bush, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out. He is on 92.3 The Fans, The Barber Shop, 8 until noon on Saturday. Monday through Friday, catch him on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, film analysis, video breakdown, 3 keys to beating the Saints. Lance Reisland straight ahead. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Browns getting ready to head to New Orleans for a game with the Saints, 1 o'clock on Sunday. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland. Film breakdown, video analysis, 3 keys to beating the Saints, getting that 3rd win of the season. And Lance, I didn't think we'd be here in Week 10 talking about getting a 3rd win, but we are. You start with one that they haven't been able to do. First key to beating the Saints, establish a coherent physical run game. Take us through that and what you mean here.
Well, the Browns just have not been able. So the Browns have not been able to generate any type of movement up front. So regardless of what they run, they have to be physically dominant in what they do. So here's my thought. My thought is, I'm a big fan of what Kevin Stefanski did. He tried to bring in Dorsey, tried to maximize Deshaun Watson. Well, Deshaun Watson's no longer playing, and I think they got to get back to what Kevin Stefanski does, which is weak side zone, gap schemes. But the thing is, with a lot of these schemes, is there's big double teams involved. The Browns have to get back to physically moving people back. And if you look at the Falcons here, they do a really good job of moving the Saints. Going back to like what you said, looking for their 3rd win, the coaches got to get back to work and not worry about anything else but what the Saints do. And this is a defense they can run the ball on, but they got to get back to basics, being physical and run the ball downhill.
Yeah, and people will point to, the Falcons lost. I think it was 3 field goals that Atlanta missed in that game against them. But, we've talked about it. For whatever reason, scheme, injury, the offensive line, which I thought was really good and a strength, has not been good, and it hasn't been a strength of this offense.
Well, and when you struggle, you have to go back to the basics. And the basics mean, if you look back in previous years, even if you look at what the Saints do, Kubiak on offense, even though the Saints aren't great at offense, they do a lot of things with multiple ways to run wide zone, multiple ways to do things. I don't think the Browns need to do that right now. I think the Browns need to run some simple gap schemes and basically challenge their guys. These are pros. These guys who know how to block a bunch of different schemes. They're all coming from different offenses. They know what to do. They have to get their mindset right. They have to get down, put their hand on the ground, and start knocking people around. That's what they did for a lot of years. And that's a mentality. That's not a scheme. The scheme is one thing, but they've lost their mentality, and that's coaching, and they got to get that back moving forward. Their job's on the line now, so people got to get back to what they do best, and that's run the ball with physicality.
All right, so second key of the three keys to beating the Saints, you have to find Hill and Kamara. That's Taysom Hill. They're tight end, can be quarterback. They line him up as a running back. And Alvin Kamara, who's some speed. Take us through what you mean here.
Well, so they line him Taysom Hill up at quarterback here. They do so many different things with him. So here's at the quarterback gives you a +1. They did it against the Browns. Then you're going to get Kamara. They run this wide zone. And just like with Shanahan, Kubiak going back to the days, they do a bunch of different stuff with this wide zone. But with Taysom Hill and Kamara, the big thing is you have to locate them. I don't think I've seen a guy in my time covering film that plays more position than Taysom Hill. He literally plays every position on the field. Quarterback, running back, tight end, receiver, kick returner. He runs the ball, he runs zone, he does everything, and he does everything pretty well. So they got to locate him. And then Kamara's their home run hitter. Obviously with Olave out, and Rashid out, they got some injuries. So these are the two guys they got to find. These are the two guys that do a lot of things. Find them, find the football, make tackles, and the Browns should be okay.
Yeah, and Hill's a little bit of a scary one. He's kind of that big bruiser, and Kamara is a speed back. So it's a nice compliment that they have between those two guys. The third one that you have, and it seems like we say this every week, and it seems like every week they fail to do it, end every drive in a kick.
Well, I get redundant here, but you're going to see this play right here. You're going to see the running back next look how open he is. And that's Winston trying to hit the home run where he doesn't need to. So they have to figure out, again, look at the tailback swing here, corner drops. All he's got to do is put it on him. That's going to be a tough tackle for a corner on a big back. So what the Browns have to do and what Jameis Winston has to do is that he has to understand that the defense is still the strength of this team. The defense has still got a lot of really good players on all three levels. And until they get this figured out with the run game, with getting the ball, touches to different people, they have to play close to the best. And if you can end, and what every drive in a kick basically means punts now are bad. And if you punt the ball and make a team go 90, 80, 90 yards, and they do that, then you lose anyway. But the Browns are giving up too many short fields with both their special teams and their offense. So, again, it sounds redundant. I say a lot of the things each week, but football is like that. Football is a game of consistently doing the right things. Habits are, you are what you consistently do, and that's a habit. The Browns have to create better habits.
So they went to work and kind of did a self-scout on the bye week, did the Browns. Do you expect them to change back to more of that Kevin Stefanski type of running game?
I do. And the reason why is because the weak side zone and the counters and pulling those guards, that's what they did well for so long. And when you start thinking about jobs on the line, when you start thinking about, your ability to, as a head coach, people are questioning Kevin Stefanski, which I'll go on record saying I think Kevin Stefanski is one of the best play designers I've ever seen. He's a great play caller. He tries to maximize. And sometimes when you delegate too much, the bottom line is everything rolls downhill and you're the last one in line. And as a head coach, you got to go back to what you know. And I also believe this, you can only fix what you know. And right now he's trying to fix stuff that's not his style, zone, some of these RPOs, some of the things that they kind of did, they kind of didn't do. They got to get back to what he does so he knows how to fix it. And if you're going to go down, this is going to be your last season or whatever happens, I always believe you go down with what you do best. And if it's not good enough, then it's not good enough. I would hate to see somebody lose a job because they're not doing what they do.
What about the defense? We talked about it a little bit last week. The breakdowns against the Chargers were, there are 3 or 4 plays, and there's probably 5 plays. There's 5 to 6 plays that decide every NFL game. And the Browns blew the coverage in 4 of them against the Chargers, and one of them was a kick coverage, but those 4 plays cost them the game.
Well, yeah, so if you're in man coverage and they are playing some man, they're playing some zone, you're going to give up some big plays. What you got to do is you got to give up chunks, not home runs. And that's what they're doing right now is they're giving up home runs when they miss. Now, a lot of it has to do with the offense. The offense has to do its part. And I truly believe that all football is still, even at the NFL level, is very complementary. So those defensive guys are relying on their offense to score 21, 28 points. And the Browns aren't doing that. And when you do that, you start to press on defense and you try to make things go, you try to play perfect and you try to make, I would say the big thing they have to do defensively is not change who they are, maybe create some more turnovers, maybe bring some blitzes, maybe disguise some coverages more, maybe challenge in man coverage. There's lots of different answers, and I believe in coaches, and these guys work very hard and they have long hours. So they have a plan. I think that defense has got to create some turnovers. They got to create some short fields. They have not done a really good job of creating short fields for the offense. So that would be the next bet. They've played pretty solid this year. They've had some breakdowns, but they know if they don't play, close to the best, there's a possibility they're going to lose because the offense is so bad right now.
So I know you've watched plenty of film. Have you seen a progression in Nick Chubb, and do you think is he? I kind of get the feeling that he might be ready, break a couple of big runs.
I do. The problem is right now with Nick Chubb, just like everything else, they don't pass protect, but Nick Chubb is getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. Well, basically he's getting hit at the line of scrimmage. I think it's 0.1 or 0.2. So, he's getting hit before he even gets going. So the Browns offensive line has to do a little better job of just giving him a minor seam. And we know from the past, he doesn't need much of a seam. Do I think he's back healthy? Yes. I think he's going to get better and better. I don't care who you are. Nick Chubb is a freak when it comes to athleticism. There was going to be a testing period of that knee. When you have a knee injury like that, you don't know if it's going to work the same. But all indications that are back. But once again, you're not a good running back unless you have a good offensive line. And as good as Nick Chubb is, and he's as good as it gets, they need to get some movement so he can make some dynamic plays downfield. If they don't get any movement, he's going to get tackled like he is now over and over and over.
So the switch that you're talking about, in the run game would also be to help benefit Nick Chubb.
Yeah, because there's less thinking up front, and I'm a big believer. I don't care what level you're at. If you're doing less thinking up front at any position, but especially offensive line, if your brain is thinking, your feet aren't moving, and so they have to simplify, get these guys getting off the ball downhill with attitude, knowing what they have. A lot of times in zone, there's so much goes into it because there's two guys for two guys, and you adjust what you do offensively based on what the two defenders do. In gap schemes, you come down inside with your hair on fire and try to knock somebody out. And I think that's what they got to do. And with that, you will give up some penetration at times, but you're going to create some running lanes that the Browns need right now. They need to create an identity. They need to get back to knocking people off the football. I don't care what level you are. You got to run the football to have success. You got to stop the run. And you got to run the ball. And until the Browns do that, they're going to struggle.
Lance Reisland, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, 3 keys to beating the New Orleans Saints. Always really good stuff with the film breakdown video analysis. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
To take a look at the quarterback that's currently playing at Indiana. May not be a number 1 pick overall, may not be a first-round pick overall, but he is a quarterback with the right size, the right arm strength, and has several starts, and he's pretty athletic and talented. A guy you can bring in and groom for a year or two, and I think he's more the kind of quarterback that would fit the Browns. We need to stay away from Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders. I think there's just too dangerous a pick for that, and I'm sure Dion wouldn't want him coming to the Browns. But anyways, Jackson Dart is good. He looks good, but he's listed at 6'2", but he looks a lot smaller. I'm not sure about him, but he wouldn't be a bad pick. But I think this kid out of Indiana, being 6'5" or so, and bigger and stronger, and that's the kind of guy we need in Cleveland. Anyways, just food for thought. Bye-bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, the Barking Browns podcast. Jacob, Rourke is a kid that played at Ohio before going to Indiana, so I've seen him quite a bit. I'm curious as to how the NFL evaluates him.
Yeah, I recently worked for Ohio University for several years, and so I got a good close look at Curtis Rourke as well while he was there. And the strides and improvements he has made in his first year in Indiana are off the charts. Like, this is not the guy I watched at OU. Don't get me wrong. He was a good quarterback at Ohio University. He just wasn't a undefeated quarterback in the Big Ten at Ohio University. Like, the caller really, I thought, hit the nail on the head talking about the size. That's what you want. He's 6'5", 225. That's prototypical size, and he's 100% a Kevin Stefanski quarterback. Looking at my notes on Curtis Rourke, that is what they say. High football IQ, has played a ton of football, played 4 years at Ohio University before playing this year. Biggest knock on him, man, is he gets hurt a lot. I mean, he's hurt again this year, missed some time. He had the knee injury and some other nagging things that happened to him while he's with the Bobcats. But high football IQ, quickly processes, gets the ball out quickly. Doesn't have a rocket of an arm. His arm's not up there with like Cam Ward or Jalen Milroe in terms of strength or overall talent. But I think he's got an NFL arm that is similar to that of what Shedeur Sanders has. If you get him, I think you could even take him with the Bills pick in the 90s or an early day 3. He's definitely a guy that thrives in a certain type of system, and that system is what Kevin Stefanski also thrives in coaching.
Yeah, the other thing is his brother was the quarterback before him at Ohio, and I think he's in the CFL right now. So a quarterbacking family, if you will. All right, this one from ESPN.com. It's NFL offseason predictions. With Joel Bitonio for the Browns. Bitonio, 1 year left on his contract, is scheduled to earn $15 million in 2025. All but $1.255 million of that are in the form of a option roster bonus. Team could decide on by March. If the Browns can avoid bonus payments, they could release Bitonio in the offseason, take on about $14.5 million in dead money 2025. They also say Deshaun Watson, in this article, designating him as post-June 1 cut would allow them to spread the dead money hit over 2 years, and that's probably the best solution for the Browns. Right now, it would hurt. It will set the franchise back years. It could cost people their jobs, but the mistake they made in 2022, and unfortunately, there's no clean way out of it. Well, we have had Jack Duffin on here, and it's not. I don't think they're doing it this year. I think they'll redo it, push it back another year, and then they minimize the cap hit. And they pay him to, okay, come in, and if we don't like what we see, you can go over there, and we'll have the other guys play quarterback.
I think that even in that article, like in what you said, laid it all out there. Like, it would set the franchise back for years. Well, then you're not going to do that move. Like, there's no reason for that. Like, you've said it. Jack has talked about it on the OBR. I've talked to him personally about it, and send him home and pay him. Like, that's fine. That's what Houston did the year before, before the sitting it out and the trade and all that stuff. Like, before all the allegations had come out for him, they were making him, like, I think Jack said he was like the scout team safety or something like that. And you send him home, you pay him, and he just doesn't play. You effectively work with a 52-man roster if he doesn't start the year on PUP. But, like, you can't cut him right now, not even post June 1 in 25, maybe post June 1 in 2026. But the dead money and the cap hit, it's really going to tie their hands, and they have enough money, as Jack has talked about, to move around where even with him on the books, they'll be okay.
Yeah, relative to Joel Bitonio, I could see them doing that. I could see him retiring. I think he's a little bit more beat up than we thought. And the offensive linemen do not age gracefully in the NFL, is how I would put it.
When you talk about a guy that has really been dealing with a back injury now for about a couple of years, it really flared up and he missed some time last year. And a guy, I have back issues from time to time, and I'm not nearly as big as Joel Bitonio, so I can only imagine how much harder it is on a guy like that, of that size, to have those back problems. And he just doesn't look like the same player. I agree with you. I kind of lean towards him possibly retiring after this year. It's why I'm heavily looking at this interior offensive line class for the 2025 draft. It'll be interesting because taking on $14 million in dead cap to cut him does kind of sting a little bit. I think it's more likely that he retires, but I think there's a very good chance he doesn't play for Cleveland after this year.
All right, so this is concerning. This is the number of penalties committed by each NFL team so far this season. I was surprised. The Ravens are number 1. The Jets are number 2. Seahawks are 3. Texans and Panthers tied for 4, and the Browns at 6, 9 behind the Ravens, 71 penalties. The frustrating part of this is I guarantee you if you do pre-snap motion like those, I guarantee you the Browns are number 1 in the league by a pretty significant margin.
I would have to do the math, but I feel like the high percentage of their overall penalties probably fall in those categories. And that's just so frustrating. If you look back in 2023, they were up in the top 3 in most penalties last year. It's just they were able to overcome some of those things, and they were so resilient last year that you just don't remember how bad it's been. I've talked a lot on the Barking Browns about running this back with Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, but they've got to figure out a way to change some of these things. The injury situations, the way they keep popping up, and then simple mistakes, shift penalties, legal formations, false starts before the plays even happen. Because almost on every play that's been like an illegal shift, they'll get like 15 yards. And then it'll be like, no, not only did you not get the 15 yards, you lost 5 yards. And it's like the situations in which all of these things come up, they're just unacceptable. And yet they happen week after week and year after year. It's got to be one of the top priorities for Kevin Stefanski and his staff moving forward, because you just can't win like this.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you relative to Stefanski and Berry being back, and I know I get a lot of pushback. There is a contingent, it might even be 50-50 split, it might be swinging a little bit more, that think it's time to move on from Kevin Stefanski. And you know, the record is what it is. It's horrible, and they expected to contend for an AFC championship. Quarterback play was just dreadful. What I think has to happen, they have to continue to play hard, because Kevin Stefanski has to be able to say, I didn't lose the locker room. And he hasn't yet. But, man, if you have a couple more outings like you've had, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and you've got to find a way to build momentum going into 2025 if you want to convince this locker room to rally around him again, like they did last year in 2023 when they had so much success down the stretch. For me, it's not even necessarily about winning the games. Yes, obviously you want to win games, but like if you can be competitive, like kind of like you're talking about, just don't look the way they have looked. Like there has got to be something to sell to these guys that are returning and to sell to free agents when they try to make those moves. Like they built some momentum last year. If they can build that kind of momentum going into the offseason and figure out the quarterback situation and not run out what they ran out this year to start the year, I think it can be a bounce back year in 25. But you've just got to give reason for hope if you're Kevin Stefanski in that offensive or in that whole coaching staff.
Yeah, here's the other thing, though. The offense has to look good with Jameis Winston. You have to be able to sell to everybody. It was our really bad quarterback play that led us to 2-7. And the quarterback play was awful. Yep. And I was the guy that defended Deshaun Watson. I've said that, and I own that. And I was wrong at this point. We'll leave it at that. This from Dogs by Nature, players on the active roster who could see more game action following the bye. Wide receiver Jamari Thrash, positional scheme versatility will make it hard for the team to keep him off the field going forward. He's already shown the ability to be productive at the Z and in the slot. Cornerback Cameron Mitchell. Mitchell, all the attributes Cleveland looks for when it comes to slot nickel corners. And linebacker Nathaniel Watson. Been limited to 19 total snaps, but when he's been out there, he's looked pretty good. I understand all of them, and I think you need to see all of those guys and see what you have in them.
Especially with Jamari Thrash, I think now that you have an NFL caliber quarterback, assuming that Jameis can correct it and be somewhere in between what he was on the good start versus the bad start, you just got to see that he can do something. Like, you are evaluating these guys. You've got a quarterback that's an league average quarterback in Winston who can get him the ball and give Thrash the opportunity to do some of the things that we drafted him to do, which is create yards after the catch. I think Nathaniel Watson is in a great spot because, I don't know if we'll see Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah again if the Browns drop several of these games going forward. And they're in a bad spot when he comes back from IR with it being a scary neck injury. There could be a chance they shut him down if they're 2-3 more games. So if they're like 3-9 or 2-10 or something, heaven forbid they lose all these games, you could be like, okay, let's get him back out there. We know he can play special teams. We know he can rush the passer. Let's see if he can take a Mahmoud Diabate role where he was more of a pass rusher in college who barely played off-ball linebacker. And now he looks really good at Mike linebacker in a few games. And maybe they rotate some of those guys in there and use the veteran like Jordan Hicks to kind of groom them. And then when you turn to Cam Mitchell, it feels like a foregone conclusion that Greg Newsome is working his way out of Cleveland at some point. If you are going to do that, you need to have somebody that can step up and be that slot corner. And I think Cam Mitchell has shown he has the ability to play in there in some of the action that he has gotten. And that's what this year just becomes. Try to rotate these guys in there. Try to get Cam Mitchell more snaps. Even play him at some outside corner. I don't think he's really built for that in the NFL, but I think, in some situations, just see what he can give. But that's what this year becomes about, man. These three guys, I think, are great options to see what they've got and if they can be the future of this team.
Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, the Barking Browns podcast. And now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the Saints game coming up Sunday in New Orleans. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
I just picked up all the Ohio Lottery holiday scratch-offs.
They're multiplying.
Yeah, multiplying. Get the chance to multiply my prize by 200 times with Holiday Bonus Millions.
No, they're multiplying.
Oh, you're in a daze.
A holidays.
Snap out of it, because even if we don't win instantly, all the holiday games offer a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of the ticket.
Wait, did you say up to 1,000 times?
Sure did.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Browns face the Saints. Their quarterback, Derek Carr, talked about what he sees when he looks at Myles Garrett.
95 is one of the best players in the world. I've played against him a few times, and I just have the utmost respect for him. Whenever you get to play against a player like that, him and they have multiple, but he. Up front, he runs the show, and you watch him play, and you admire it, you honor it, you respect it, and then you get excited about competing against him, because a guy like that, he'll be a Hall of Famer, and those are the matchups you look forward to going against, because someday your kids will be like, man, you played against him, and yes, those will be cool things.
And Jacob, Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, when he's been healthy, are having really good years, and because the Browns have been so bad, it's getting lost in it. It's getting lost in the overall poor performance.
Yeah, and I think like the defense overall has had that too, where they've kind of gotten worn down and let up some points to where you're like, maybe that defense is not that good. But Myles Garrett gets 3 sacks in 4 plays last week, and this is a guy that's been hurt all year. He's talking about an injury with both feet and some other nagging things that have been going on with him just about all year. And now he's coming off the bye week and had a couple of weeks to kind of get his feet back under him. And, Schwartz talked about him being healthy earlier this week. But, you're going up against Derek Carr, who has been known to have issues turning the ball over, especially under pressure. If Myles Garrett can go out and be the guy he was against the Chargers, they got 6 sacks as a team, but 3 from him, and they can do that against the Saints. They can make this game really interesting.
All right, so this is from Browns Wire. 5 Saints players the Browns must lock in on in the Week 11 matchup. Quarterback Derek Carr, we've already heard from him, missed most of October with an injury, has returned 505 passing yards and 3 touchdowns since he's been back. Safety Tyrann Mathieu holds a 61 PFF grade, significantly lower than his first 2 seasons with the Saints. Remember, the Saints did trade their best corner, Marshawn Lattimore. Wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 109 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns last week against the Falcons. Saints are banged up at wide receiver. Demario Davis, people forget he played with the Browns. Leads the team 66 tackles, 37th in the NFL. And Alvin Kamara, 4th in the NFL with 715 rushing yards. He also has 421 receiving yards, leads all running backs. Kamara concerns me quite a bit, and Derek Carr seems to always have pretty good games against the Browns when he plays them.
There's a lot of quarterbacks where you'll say like, oh, they can crack under pressure and turn the ball over. It's like, but not against the Browns. It's like, that's just seems to be how it works out. And I think that Derek Carr, probably you're right on that. It's definitely, he's definitely one of those guys. Yeah. If I'm looking at that list, especially on offense, it's Alvin Kamara. Like, you're talking about a guy over 1,000 all-purpose yards already. 29 years old, doesn't really show much signs of slowing down at this point, but he's like the guy that I'm locking in on that offense. If I can find a way to limit Alvin Kamara, I feel pretty good about going up against the Saints. Their top pass catchers, Shaheed and Chris Olave, are out. Yeah, Marquez Valdez-Scantling kind of came out of nowhere the last couple of weeks, had a couple of good games. But, you know, you're talking about a guy that was available later in the year for a reason. So without their top guys out there, if you can find a way to limit Alvin Kamara and make Derek Carr uncomfortable, you got a really good shot. And then flipping it on the other side, yeah, Tyrann Mathieu starts to become one of the bigger pieces, because you're looking at an offense with Jameis Winston that is like to get a little bit more vertical than they did with Deshaun Watson. And like you said, Marshawn Lattimore, great, phenomenal player. He's not there anymore. If you're going to try to test things deep, you've got to worry about Mathieu, because he is one of those ball hawking safeties that does a really great job of undercutting routes and forcing turnovers. So if you can push the ball vertically on Mathieu, get behind him a little bit, he's lost a step or so over the years as he gets older, I think you got a real shot. But yeah, that's a great list.
Yeah, the one that I would add to it is Taysom Hill, because, you know, if they get inside the 5-yard line, he's coming in, and I have some concerns about an overly aggressive defense with Taysom Hill as a running type quarterback. So we'll see. This also from ESPN.com. It's preview for this game. So Browns storyline to watch: defensive communication, a point of emphasis, a pair of deep touchdowns before the bye and the loss to the Chargers. Saints storyline to watch: Saints had a late forced fumble and an interception to seal a win against the Falcons. They hope they can make some of those plays against Jameis Winston, who had 5 interceptions in his past 4 starts, 2-2 as a Saint in 2023, 3 in Week 9 versus the Chargers. All right, when I look at that, and we touched on it, their wide receiving core is depleted. So you want to get after Derek Carr. Don't give him time to throw. Don't give him time to do anything underneath. But the defensive communication it's concerning. I mean, this is almost, and remember, Joe Woods is their defensive coordinator, and it's almost looking like that kind of mishaps the last few weeks.
Yeah, I've said the exact same thing. I'm like, we all wanted to be mad at Joe Woods for 3 years about it, and all of a sudden that's happening in Cleveland now with him gone. Yeah, you know, that's the big key, is trying to force some turnovers and try to make Derek Carr uncomfortable. But if you leave someone wide the heck open as a result, because you can't communicate defensively, you're in a rough spot. Like that's a problem, you know? Like you can't leave these guys wide open, because that gives them easy answers and they can negate whatever you're doing, you know, well on the defensive side in terms of pressure, because he's just going to throw the ball to somebody that's wide open. It's just, you cannot give opposing quarterbacks, especially a quarterback like Carr. You may not put him in that elite tier, but Carr has played a ton of football and had a ton of success in the NFL. You cannot give a guy like that incredibly easy answers. If you give him an easy out in the plays that your front and your pressure coverage plays really, really well, then you're going to be in a bad spot.
All right, before I let you go, same article, bold prediction. Elijah Moore will have 60-plus yards receiving, 9 targets a week ago, but managed just, so that was before the bye, just 28 yards. Expect the volume to be there, especially since he may often draw Alante Taylor, who has allowed 1.9 yards per coverage snap, third most among slot corners. And I hesitate anything. I'd like to see more from Elijah Moore. They got to find something in the passing game. Tillman looks like it's there. I'd love to see Judy and Njoku more involved as well.
Yeah, it becomes a point where you're talking about a lot of mouths to feed to try to figure out if these guys have futures with the Browns. And right now, Cedric Tillman's got that hot hand, and you got to lean on that because you've got a young second-year wide receiver who looks on the verge of wanting to bust out and break onto the scene as a NFL starting top tier kind of number one for a team. And you cannot risk like taking some of those targets away from him. And I think Jameis has really liked leaning on Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku in his athleticism and the mismatches that he can catch. It's hard for me to really predict a big game from Elijah Moore. I know he's had a good game when Jameis threw for over 300 yards, but I look at him as like the fourth, maybe fifth option, depending on where you are in the game and how other guys are playing. And it's just really hard for me to kind of predict a big stat line when you're not in the top 2 or 3 options.
Yeah, and again, I want to get the ball in Njoku's hands and Judy's hands where they can get some yard after catch, hit them in stride, let them do what they do well. We haven't really seen that to the level we thought we would this year.
Yeah, for sure. It just seems like there's been so many situations where the balls that are thrown at some of these yards after catch guys have been thrown in a way that it doesn't allow for them to move after they catch the ball. There's not a lot of separation, or they're in a congested area in some situations where they're not able to run. We've seen it some. They've given them some opportunities and they've been able to capitalize on it when they do it. It's just, I think some of the route concepts and some of the balls haven't really led the guys in such a way that they have been hit in stride so that they can keep going. I thought we saw some of that stuff from Jameis in his first start. So I think they got to focus on trying to get back to some of the things where they just look for quick and easy answers and let their guys do what their guys are paid to do.
Jacob Roach, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report. He is also the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. Always really good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.